Hello, my name is Jorb. I love gear. Today we're talking about what might be the strangest synthesizer I've ever used. This is the Herbs and Stones Liquid Foam. Part synthesizer, part groovebox, not conforming to the rules or the standards of either. It really is different, and I'm excited to get to try it. And I get to try it because with the fine folks at Perfect Circuit, they reached out to me and asked if I wanted to show this off. I said, you know what? I could go for something weird in my life. And in exchange, I'm telling you about Perfect Circuit. If you don't know about them, Perfect Circuit is a store that sells Eurex stuff, full hardware synthesizers, pro audio effects, anything that makes my Gearman heart flutter. They probably have it for sale, even weird stuff like this, the liquid foam, and they ship worldwide. So I'm comfortable telling all you guys I like to use Perfect Circuit because I actually do, and I know for a fact wherever you are, you can use them too. So thank you again, Perfect Circuit. This is sincere. I really do think Perfect Circuit does a great job. Okay, so the liquid foam. The only thing I've ever seen it directly compared to is the TB303, and in some ways, I don't think that's a fair comparison, but it's also the only thing that makes any sense to compare it to. I think because the core elements that make the 303 what it is are all there. You have a single oscillator, you have a simple envelope that's just decay, and you have sequences built in, you have a resonant filter that likes to be overdriven. All that could totally be describing the 303, but the way you interact with the liquid foam, the way you control it, the way you program, and it's not even really fair to say program, but the way you work out sequences is almost bizarre in nature. And this is a bit of a spoiler. I don't think it's necessarily for a user like me, but that doesn't mean I can't show you what I think it's good at or explain how to use it. And I think that explaining it in a somewhat traditional or conventional way, the way I normally would, step through what a synthesizer can do and how it works, can be really helpful in understanding the weirdness of this. If we bring it back to concepts we do understand, then it's not so weird anymore. And if you're familiar with synthesis or sequencers, you have all the vocabulary you need to understand what this is doing and understand what makes it cool. So, all that said and done, let's get a closer look on the table. Okay, the liquid foam is anything but normal, is anything but typical, but I'm still going to try and explain things in a relatively conventional order. First, this uses banana jacks, not eighth-inch jacks, not quarter-inch jacks. And banana jacks have, normally I've seen stacking ones. These have, like, on the barrel, a way to link them together. Okay, that will come in useful later, but don't worry about the way things are set up right now, but I want to show you the oscillator and the filter first. So I plug that in, and I open our cutoff. And there we go. Hope that's showing up okay on the mirror. The way the oscillator works, it's these four knobs, the two in the middle and these two here. And we have a sort of cascading mixer. So this first one takes us from a triangle to a sawtooth. And this second one mixes between that and a variable pulse width. That's relatively conventional, isn't it? Is actually quite a lot of flexibility. Let's move it around. I'll leave it on the sawtooth. And our filter is two poles, and even at no resonance, is kind of resonant. We also have drive that pairs well with the resonance. Okay, next I might talk about something like the envelopes, which I can't talk about in isolation. So it's just a decay envelope, and the only way to trigger it is by triggering one of these A, B, and C inputs. And that brings us into everything else. So that's about as far as I can demonstrate things in isolation. It's just the oscillator and the filter. And now everything needs to be working together to further demonstrate things, which is totally unique. But I'm going to set up just the simplest sequence we can. And so sequencer 1 on the left here moves clockwise. As you can see, there's just 4 steps, and they're all gates. They're either on or off. And the way we trigger the gate and play a pitch is with A, B, and C. And so whenever a gate hits A, that's the pitch we get. Whenever a gate hits B or C. Okay. And if I want a sequence to be 2 notes, guess what I do? I plug the next gate into another pitch. You can trigger the same pitch on multiple. If I link these together, I can play that same step for twice as long. Or if I want to trigger a pitch that isn't just A, B, or C, I can split that gate into two, and it'll add them up. So that's just B. That's just A. That's A plus B. And I can do A plus C. Great. Hope that kind of makes sense. Now, every time we hit this, we're triggering gate, we're also triggering our envelope. I'm sure you can hear it, but let me get some more steps going. Okay, and every time we get a gate at A, B, or C, we trigger our decay envelope. And there isn't really a way to separately change the decay time and decide how much that gets applied to the filter. It's all just on the decay knob. And this offset control isn't doing anything yet. But there is about as simple as a sequence as we can get. In fact, it's even one step more complicated because I'm pairing these two gates, but... Okay, I'm going to unplug all those. I'll just leave these hanging out here. Let's watch the lights of sequencer 1 here, and it has two modifiers, X and Y. So if I apply a constant gate to X, see what it does? It moves backwards. But if you just trigger it once, and let's do it in sequence here. So if every time I hit step 4, I trigger the modifier X, you'll see that once we get to green, it goes back to yellow. Or how about we trigger it on step 1? Once we get to blue, we're also lighting up red. Or how about that one? So the sequencer is always moving, and same thing with Y. If we just run it on this step, see when green is lighting up? Green is lighting up on its normal 4th step and when the red one is lit up. And so let's do that same. Let's trigger Y with step 3. And Y seems to trigger the one in the opposite corner. Whenever we hit the 3rd step, we're also lighting up our 1st step again. So that's another way where we can trigger multiple pitches on the same step. Already a weird sequence. Y was weirder. And it really encourages you because they're all just gates. You can put everything wherever. You can set up some really weird patterns. And that seems to like lower the pitch by some indeterminate amount as well. We stack gates like that. Okay. So I can't even really tell you exactly what X and Y are doing. Even standing here playing with it, there's a little bit of unpredictability in both of these. So X and Y are weird, and they make this sequencer 1 become really, really weird. But it still is always triggering on this same 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If we want a weirder sequencer, sequencer 2. This sequencer moves counterclockwise from the start, and it only progresses a step when both this LFO, which we determined right here, and this LFO are both active. So it's related to the rate of our first sequencer, but it also has this element of sort of, I don't want to say drunkenness, but wonk. It is related to our core clock, but if I get this too fast, it's like we never get a chance to trip it. And if I have the width too high, this just stays on constantly. And so I find having them close enough that they're almost phasing is the right way to do it. I also really wish this could go a lot slower. And we can use the LFO like an output from a sequencer. It's just triggering out a gate over and over. And we can use that to trigger the other sequencer. We can use that to trigger a note. Even in a way that doesn't sound very good. Or we can use that for the two envelope modifiers, which are inverting it and sending it to the oscillator. So I'm going to take a step that's already triggering a note and send that to the envelope inversion. And so when you invert the envelope, it becomes only an attack envelope, and this offset also gets added. So if I turn the offset all the way up, those notes with the high cutoff are the ones where we're triggering the envelope inversion. And you can hear the attack on some of those notes like this. Cool. Another way to change things per step. Great. You can also send the envelope generator to the pitch of your oscillator, but I have a little trouble getting this to sound musical, especially on its own. So whenever we trigger it, I'm going to trigger the envelope inversion as well. And that, to me, is much more audible because it takes the offset into account. It's not really a variable amount, it's just the amount that you configure here on the envelope. But because we're inverting it, you can hear it rising up. If I take that out, then it descends. Pretty cool. So that's actually pretty much everything. In general, tips for the way I like to use this, I like to trigger my notes from one sequencer and my modifiers from another, so to speak. So if I'm using this to trigger, say, if I'm using envelope 2 for my notes, I'll use envelope 1 for my, or sequencer 1, excuse me, for my envelope inversion. Because they're related, and they're sequencing somewhat related. But the fact of the matter is, the way this is set up, if it sounds weird and bad, tweak some shit. Even right now, I really wish I had more banana jacks. But this is all I got. I also find in general that my favorite sequencer for the pitches is Oscillator 2. Or excuse me, is Sequencer 2. That's about all I got to say. I think the liquid foam is interesting, and it has that element of exploration, and it has that element of it's okay that you don't know what's going to happen when you route this stuff together. And there are a few things that aren't here that I would have really appreciated. I would have really liked an envelope amount. I would have really liked the second signal that triggers your second sequencer to be an input. So fine, hardwire it to the rate of our first sequencer here, but let me pick the second gate that lets this move forward. And so then I could just put it to another step in this first sequencer, and it could be a subdivision. That, to me, is immediately more useful. And that is, I don't mean to say that anything on this is lacking, because it is so different. You know what I mean? What else would I like is sort of based on a conventional idea of a sequencer paired with an oscillator and a filter, is based on my conventional ideas of a little synthesizer, when this isn't trying to be that in any way. So I don't know that it's even valid for me to complain like that. I know there's a Eurorack module version, which I think would be pretty interesting, and then I would have more cables first and foremost, but more ways to bring gate signals into it, and I think that could be really, really fascinating as well. But I think the liquid foam, in some ways similar to what I said about the microcosm, it's good for somebody who wants to be surprised. It's good for somebody who wants to explore it. And the way, at least I found, that it is best interacted with is just trying stuff. There's enough weirdness in the way it works that I often wondered if I was doing something wrong or if this is just how this little box reacts. And you just need to get over that and keep trying stuff. And if it sounds good, stick with that. If it sounds weird, just assume that's on purpose. So there you go. The liquid foam is something I'm really glad I got to try. I'm curious about how it pairs with some other Banana Jack gear, maybe Buchla stuff. I don't know if anybody really has that anymore, if that's just, the domain of collectors. But I know Herbs and Stones makes a drum machine, the Gentle Wham. And I think pairing that with this could be quite fascinating. Or even the Eurorack module, or if I had a good way to convert from Banana Jacks to 1/8 Jacks. I could really see this becoming quite interesting, especially for somebody who wants a little bit of randomness, and a little bit of randomness controlled in a way that feels like you came across it very, very naturally, as opposed to, trying to quantize noise or anything. The randomness you get from working with these two sequencers is quite pleasing, and evolves over time just by the nature of these two LFOs phasing. Anyway, I'm rambling. I think the liquid foam is cool and interesting if you like to explore. If you want something completely different, I think it is an incredibly refreshing way to sit down and make noise. There you go. My name's Jorb. I love gear. Cheers. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. And so long.